Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on FAC Connect today for our event celebrating 50 years of Cleo Parker Robinson Dance. My name is Ryan Ben-Yagali, and I am a professor of music history in the Colorado College Music Department. I'm also the college's director of performing arts. And the Office of Performing Arts amplifies the role of the arts in the academic mission of the college. We support the collaborative and the creative impulses of our campus and of our community. And this includes, of course, the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center at Colorado College. So we spend a lot of time facilitating interdisciplinary connections between the arts, as well as building bridges between the arts and other academic areas of the college and our community. So we've got the wonderful privilege to work with numerous regional arts partners and creatives. And that includes not only tonight's event, but also extends into additional programming that you'll see and be featured here on the FAC Connect platform over the course of the next several years. This platform is now up and running. If you want to go back into the archives and look at what we did back in the fall, I encourage you to do so. I also want to mention briefly another project that's coming up, the second iteration of our 3x3 projects, Creative Collaborations from Isolation. This program effectively commissions digital collaborative projects by artists in our region about our region, and there's more information that can be found about that on the link that's located conveniently right here below me. It's a long link, but if you also go to the FAC website and you click at the top of the page, you'll find a link to the 3x3 projects for more information about how to submit proposals for this wonderful opportunity. In honor of our sense of place and our region, I would also like to note that Colorado College and the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center at Colorado College are located within the unceded territory of the Ute peoples. The earliest documented peoples here also include the Apache, Arapaho, Comanche, and Cheyenne. I ask that you join me in acknowledging these communities, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. Colorado College and the FAC also acknowledges that our institutions were founded upon exclusions and erasures of many Indigenous peoples. This acknowledgement demonstrates a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. Now, before I introduce our moderator for today's conversation, I'd like to also acknowledge the efforts of a few of our staff members that have been working hard behind the scenes to make this all happen. That includes Kate Ferdinandi, Morgan Gatson, Julia Barrett, Michelle Winchell, Dory Mitchell, and Serena Wolford. And I would also like to thank very much Rita Sheed and Mary Hart from Cleo Parker Robinson Dance for all of their assistance. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome to the screen our moderator, our esteemed director of the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center, Idris Goodwin.
Thank you, Ryan, and hello, virtual world. How you doing tonight, Ryan?
I'm doing real well. I'm real excited for this. How are you doing?
I'm doing well as well, man. I'm really excited about this conversation too, because I think that one of our goals, I think our joint goals as, you know, the Fine Arts Center and also the Office of Performing Arts is really shining a light and illuminating the stories and the history of the arts here in the West, in Colorado. That, you know, what's so exciting about tonight is we're going to be able to delve into, you know, half a century, 5 decades of history of producing original work, sharing additional work from a Afro diasporic point of view, and that's really unique and really special. And so I don't know about you, my friend, but I'm very, very excited.
I'm very excited as well. I think it's spot on.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for introducing us, and I'm going to introduce our panel, and we're going to get into some conversation. I encourage everyone who is viewing and listening to leave comments or questions as we go through it, and we're just going to weave it. We're just gonna have a free flowing conversation, you know, for about an hour 15, hour and change, you know, a little bit. All right, without further ado, I'm joined tonight by some very special guests. Of course, the founder of the Cleo Parker Robinson Dance Company, as well as the Associate Artistic Director, Winifred Harris, the Rehearsal Director, Chloe Grant Abel, and of course, the one and only Cleo Parker Robinson. You know, champions, social justice, multi-generational, consistent, thorough, We've got some giants of the West here. Join me in some digital applause.
Mm.
It's good to see you all. It's good to meet you all. It's good to meet you all. Where are you all broadcasting from?
Denver, Colorado. Not far. Not far. And are you in the Springs?
I am in the Springs.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Winifred?
I am in Denver as well. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Chloe, how about you?
Yes, Denver.
You have to ask that now because a lot of times,
Anyway.
sometimes I'll be on calls. I'm like, why is it so sunny where you're at? They're like, oh, I'm in Mexico. I'm like, but your office is in Philly. It's like, oh yeah, but we wouldn't. The office is empty. So you all have remained in Denver through the pandemic.
Through most of it, yes. I mean, we have been here. We've been working in the most extraordinary new ways. So we have been here, and we've been fortunate enough to continue to keep working virtually and with Zoom and in person.
Oh wow, that is a mercy for sure, and we'll definitely talk about that. I mean, one of the things we've been doing since the pandemic began and we launched our digital channel is that we've been trying to document and check in with artists and just find out, how has this affected your process? How has this affected, because the personal and the artistic are all tied into each other and our lifestyles and all that. And so we'll definitely would love to talk about that. But I just want to really kind of start at the beginning for folk who may not be as familiar and hear from each of you a little bit just about like, where do you come from? Where were you born? Where were you raised? And where did you meet dance, or where did dance meet you?
Well, I guess I'm the elder. So, I was born in Denver, and I was born in a very special area of Denver in East Denver. We call it 5 Points, and I call it the Harlem of the West. And I absolutely am just, and all the 50 years, no matter where we've been around the world, we've been a few blocks from where we began. We started on 20th and Welton, then we went to 20th and Lawrence. Then for a short time, we were in Curdy-R's school, and then we came back and we're in the shorter AME church, the historic one. So we've been in that church for over 30 years. So Denver is the corner. That's where we've been. But I was born in the Rossonier, and that was where all this great jazz took place. So we really come from a legacy of extraordinary artists. And so, on the corner, we're still there, but we've been around the world many times. And it's very exciting to be in the world and bring the world to us right there in our area.
Right on. Excellent. Harlem of the West. I didn't know. I never heard that before, but I have more questions.
Harlem of the West. But and they told me about that in New York. I love that. They claimed it.
Wow. Well, then it must be for real then.
Yeah, right. We didn't make it up.
What about you, Winifred?
I was also born and raised in Denver, Colorado, and I grew up primarily in the 5 Points area and Park Hill. I took a little trot around the globe, and I lived in Los Angeles for about 20 years. I also lived in New York and also abroad in London. So I've had a little tour, so they say. I always say I was one of the good gypsies and moved around a lot. And then I landed back here in Denver, Colorado.
And how long? And so, it's safe to assume Cleo Parker Robinson has been with Cleo Parker Robinson Dance Company for 50 years. But how long have you been with when did you get mixed up with?
Well, let me say I grew up in Cleo Parker Robinson Dance. So Cleo is my first teacher. So I truly consider her my dance mother. And I started working with her when I was 8 years old. And so I've had the pleasure of being in the company for 10 years, moving away, coming back, doing guest spots, coming back full circle as rehearsal director, and now as the associate artistic director. After being, as I said, around many places and having my own company in Los Angeles and being the good gypsy. So here I am, really happy to be continuing the legacy and the support of Cleo Parker Robinson Dance.
Amazing. Full circle.
Full
How about you? How about you, Chloe?
So I'm actually from Kansas City, Missouri. I moved here about almost 10 years ago. 10 years ago this year is actually my anniversary coming up. But I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, rooted in the arts. My father was a jazz musician. My brother was an actor. We just grew up in the arts. So I started dancing at a young age. Went to university and got my degree and lived in New York, and then found my way to Cleo in Denver. Learned about her in my history books in school, and met her for the first met her for the first time in Dallas at the International Association of Blacks in Dance conference, and I just fell in love with her spirit and how fun she was in about 10 minutes of a reception I wasn't supposed to be in. So, and then finished college and found her again after I lived in New York. So, wow. And then I was an ensemble member, apprentice ensemble member, and now I'm an ensemble member and rehearsal director. So,
isn't that awesome? That's really great. I'm glad you told that story, because you know we're part of a college, obviously, and you know dance is very popular actually at the school, and you know, I've seen how transformative the right mentors can be. You know, when we have visitors and guests and things, and I think it's really cool to hear that someone you study and that you admire from afar, you study with them, and then you go on to be a maker alongside them. And I think that's a really great story. That's a great anecdote, you know, to share with folk. It's like, you know, it's all very possible, you know.
Oh yeah. It's definitely possible. It feels like, oh, they're so far away. You know, Cleo's a legend, and it's so wonderful that I'm this close to her. I get to be this close to her every day. So I'm grateful.
Cleo, how does that fall in your ears, right? Like, how does that feel?
You know, they're very generous, and they make it happen every day. I mean, they're in rehearsal every day, working with the dancers, and I love being able to come in and just see the magic of our repertory. The repertory is amazing when you can think about 50 years of extraordinary choreographers coming in, and I chose not to be the only choreographer. I'd still love to choreograph, and I could feel the itch like I felt today when we were working, and I said to Winifred, I said, I can hear Elio Pomari talking, and I want to start getting up, and then I go, I'll probably mess up the process. They are very focused. Let me, and what's wonderful is Winifred and Chloe keep them absolutely, they're amazing. I think when people watch rehearsal, which I love, I want to invite people to come and watch when we can. And we've been able to do it on Zoom a little bit, but to watch how their brains work. Usually you're looking at the body, but the brain has to engage in some unbelievable. So I wonder, I keep looking at them going, did you have a computer up there? This is long before we started doing virtual, like the kind of the work that has to be maintained here. And then of course the spirit that they bring. And I just love all the support, because I couldn't keep a company together this long if I didn't have that love of myself, of the work, of the legacy of what we're doing in our region. You know, it is unique in our region. You know, it feels great. I love it. I feel like I'm at a party every day.
That's what's up. That is a gift. You are one of the luckiest people on the planet. It feels
we
that
get
way.
to do what we love. You
That's
know,
beautiful.
I mean,
yeah, my pops used to say, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so Winifred, I'm curious, like, you know, what I love asking people this question. So, you know, you were with the company as a kid, you know, as a child, and you came up, and then you went out and experienced the world. You know, when you came back, you know, what remained, what was the same, and what was different?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, that's a beautiful question. So what I'm gonna say, what drew me back was the desire for the dancers wanting more. What brought me back was the understanding of the legacy and my connection with Cleo Parker Robinson Dance and Cleo herself. And I don't know that there's been a company that I haven't seen, right, throughout the years. Fortunate enough to have like I said, been born here, so I came back often enough to see my family, and part of my family extends into Cleo Parker Robinson Dance. And so I have always been connected, and I felt at the time that I was coming in, one of my true teachers and mentors and was my rehearsal director when I was here with the company, was making her transition, Marceline Freeman. And Marcy and I were very close, and throughout time, had conversations. And during that transition, I just felt very strongly about the purpose and the foundation of the company being continued, and whether that was for me to pull people aside and have conversation about what that meant for me from my perspective, as watching it through the years, or being then invited into rehearsal and starting to direct in rehearsal, and that then grew into the associate artistic director position. But what remains the same is the spirit of the company. What remains the same is the foundation of the why, and that it is a healing movement activity, that we are ambassadors of arts, but that means who we are as individuals to the world, and that it is important that we hold a place for African American dancers, Black dancers, and that we that space is held because it was a space that was not so welcomed in so many other companies before. And so that legacy itself is very rich. And the fact of where we are moving to and what's changed is that we are always evolving. We're evolving to, I'll say, fit the needs of what people need today, how we feed them differently, the material, how we come at the material with still strong messages and strong messaging. But people view things differently, they see things differently. But what I feel most blessed about is to be able to have such a history with the company that I can sit with Cleo and Chloe, and I'm kind of like the middle bridge, actually, of them.
Important role.
Yeah, because I know where Cleo has begun, and I know where Chloe is now, and those foundational spaces of how we work, that is all connected. But to bring our quote unquote past repertoire into the future, and to look at future repertoire, and to ensure that it fits the vision of the company.
That's beautiful. So this is great, because I want to talk more about process and approach, but I think it would be great to start with this wonderful gift that you all have given us. You know, we launched this channel in May of last year because we just knew, listen, things are shifting and we need to stay engaging with our folks, and you know, we're gonna just create this video platform, and we are lucky enough to have your piece Movement featured on FAC Connect. So if you're tuning in right now and you're like, who are these tremendous African-American Black folks that I'm listening to right now, please go check out Movement after we're done talking, or actually go watch it now, and then this will be up and recorded later, archived. So I would love to actually start there. And let me just first say that, you know, it is a masterpiece. It really is. You know, the M is for movement, but the M is also for masterpiece. I was so just like moved, but also just deeply impressed with the precision and the craft and the depth of it. So I would love to just dig into that piece and just walk us through a little bit the genesis of that. Like, where was the initial seed? You know, how did you work it out? Who picked those songs? You know, where were there the rough spots? You know, walk us through it.
Well, you know, the songs picked me, you know, as I began to choreograph. And it was so great to have Winifred and Chloe guide me as I was discovering it myself. I mean, it was really wild. But I want to go back to with, you know, the rehearsal process. The dancers, they're so fast. They're very quick. And so, I mean, over the years, dance itself has evolved. so people can get stuff like that. They get it. And so now I really cheat. I'll go boom, 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 boom. Okay, Winifred, do you have that? Chloe, do you have that? And they go, okay, wait, we got it. And I'm like, because I might be able to only do it one time. So because I'm so lucky to have the kinds of minds and talent around me that I can work that way. Many choreographers don't. They got to really have it in their bodies and show it over and over and over again. So what started it really was our tour to Montgomery, Alabama. We had a dancer there, and he had invited us to be at Alabama State University. And he asked us to come there, the company, to really do a residency around the time to celebrate the assassination of Dr. King, which was 50 years. So this was a couple of years ago. And Michael Metcalf, who was a member of our company, knew that as he took that position, he had a vision that he was going to bring us. I didn't realize how clear he was, but it was like, okay, I don't know when I'm bringing you. But then when it was that anniversary, he brought us. And being in Alabama, and I don't think people understand it if you weren't born in the South, you don't understand some of the extraordinary struggles, but you don't understand the triumphs. And that's what I began to feel. I really understood they had been through something and they were clearer about it than maybe people who live in the North, the West Coast or whatever. So regionally, I understood that there was a different way of looking at Dr. King's 50th anniversary. And when you say assassination, so there's this double-edged thing that goes, and we had this great man and he was assassinated. So that was what hit me when I came back. And the dancers were brilliant in the master classes, and we did auditions and we performed for them. And we had lots of conversations with the young people. And maybe Chloe can remember some of that time that was really the seed for me. So when I got back after tour, and it was a couple of months later, I was to do a collaboration with Colorado Ballet. And the ballet company here is older. And yet I had worked with them very early in the development of my company, in the very, very beginning, but never choreographed on the company. I did bring Donald McHale to choreograph on the company at one point. And so I knew some of the dancers and how they worked. But this was a new company. This was like 30, 25 years later. And I knew that these were young dancers, and I'd seen them perform and they were brilliant. But they work on point. They're ballet dancers. And so I really knew that I could use the expertise of Chloe and Winifred to kind of bridge the gap between the two languages. So it's not only that they're a ballet company and we're a modern company, but they were predominantly white or European, and we're predominantly Black and coming from different regions. But I knew that there would be a lot that we'd have to pull together. But I came in and I had talked to Gil Boggs, who was the artistic director, and he said, I want to do a tour de force, bringing 3 dance companies together. And I just want you to have a choreographer that you want to choose. And we've had great choreographers, but we had to have a grant done quickly. So I just kept thinking, I said, wait, I'm not sure who. And all of a sudden I said, well, I'll choreograph it. And I'm like, what? I'm not so sure I even know what I want to do. Except when I came out of Alabama, I knew that all I cared about was that we had a better understanding what the civil rights movement was about. And young people, because artists have always been on the front line, what is our role as artists in the civil rights movement? And what does it mean to have a movement and to shift a culture? And that we needed to continue to see change. And so I would talk philosophy to Winifred and to Chloe a lot. I'd talk what was in my spirit. And then we would translate it a little bit in movement. And then I would go to work that I'd done long ago, like I did a piece about Angela Davis. So I started there. I started in my own moment of the civil rights movement. And I began to pull my own material and rethink it or remove it. And so we started that way. But I said to the dancers first day, I don't know what music, I don't know what movement. All I know is we are all together, and this is a part of the movement. Having our dancers together, period, was radical. That's all I knew. Just right then. That was it. It was radical. And then later I said, And dancers, where are you in the movement? All like that, like, where are you in the movement? And then later, we really had a movement, Black Lives Matter. And that blew me away, because it answered my question right away, that I didn't want young people to feel that they were not necessary and that voices were necessary and artists' voices were necessary. So that was sort of, it was divine for me. It was quick, but it was people were very open and very receptive. And we had classes together. Maybe, Chloe, you all talk about the process a little bit. It was pretty exciting for me, but we were on the clock. We had to start on time, have breaks on time, get out. We were on their schedule in their studio, and I wanted it to be shared. I wanted them to be in our studio and us to be in theirs and to have this equal opportunity. It didn't work like that so well, but it did work out in a way that was pretty divine.
Yeah, Winifred, Chloe, please.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So it was a really wonderful. We started the process of movement in the summer, in our summer program, and Cleo was playing around with ideas on the dancers, and I really love being like I guess the medium, but I really like when Cleo works out choreography on myself, and then I can transfer it over to the dancers. That's just something that I'm so grateful for, and I love that process, that creative process of investigating and figuring out what works. And, oh, Cleo, this doesn't feel good, or Cleo, that's great. No, don't throw that out. That feels great. Or also studying tapes and taking movement from older works that we haven't done very much, that we could still, utilize and use some of that movement. So that was exciting, that process for me. So being able to have the Colorado ballet dancers come to our studio a couple times that summer and work with our company to play with movement was really just a new energy and really exciting. And then also going over to their studios and working with them in their space, and just having that, it was really a cultural exchange. Our culture as a modern dance company, although we're all the same, we're all dancers, but it's just we work differently, and it's just a different it's just two different worlds coming together, which was really beautiful. And they were so welcoming, and we just were a big family. So it was exciting to learn from them and then have them learn from us as well. It was a really nice exchange. So the process was inspiring on all aspects. It was just a really nice process. Go ahead, Winifred, if you have something to add.
I don't know how many dancers do we have in the room. I think the part that Winifred had a hard time is that I never cut. I could never cut the dancers. And you can only have so many people on stage, so many costumes. And so every day Winifred said, okay, what's the cast? I go, honey, hold on. Let me just look at this combination. I mean, we were forever loving all the dancers, every one of them. And that was hard. That was hard, because I said, well, then we're making two casts. That was hard.
Yeah, it's a treat to have 50 plus dancers in a room, right? That's not something that, as Cleo Parker Robinson Dance, we get to enjoy on a regular basis. So I think that one of the reasons that I get to enjoy my position so much is that I get to nudge Cleo in the side and say, Cleo, we need to be on track with this. This is where we need to go. And that's a good thing, because we can all get really mesmerized by the creative process. But what I'd love to add to that is that the dancers from Colorado Ballet were so eager to do something different and to be in a different spirit. And as Chloe stated, the cultural exchange, it came from many different places, because as we started moving through the process and there's an opportunity for dancers to tell their story, we found out that even within the Colorado Ballet, there was a world of dancers that come from different countries, right? Different cities. Just like Cleo Parker Robinson Dance, I'm going to say that not very many dancers that have been with the company has come from Denver. I'm like kind of like the unicorn, right? That I was there and moved through the company and came back. It's not usual. Usually we're going outside of Colorado and to find artists to bring back. And so Colorado Ballet is no exception. They've done the same thing. So we got an opportunity to listen to stories and to ask them where they were in the movement, which was a huge question until people could dig inside themselves and know that we all have a cause and we all have a movement and there's something that we believe in. And that's really what the movement is about. So that development from that perspective was what was incredible and led them to be more open about the movement vocabulary that they were learning and doing to free them in a different way so that they can move beyond the structure of physicality, but move into the integrity and the intention of the choreography.
Man,
you know,
okay.
but Idris, I have to
No,
say,
please,
I
get
just
in there,
love it
get in
because
there.
we're having this kind of reflection back, and you know, you do these works and you move on. You know, we go on tour and we hit it, and we had so many dances we couldn't take them on tour, but we added then once we didn't have the Colorado Ballet. So a very interesting thing because Winifred's right, they came from all over the world. So we would have dancers from Italy, and then we'd have a dancer from Cuba, and then we'd have a dancer from Brazil. So it wasn't all just totally Europe with Brazil and Cuba, but they never looked at themselves that way. They looked at themselves as dancers, and I wanted them to look at themselves as all of their who they were and their ancestors. I wanted them to bring their ancestors. They were like, "You want me to bring who?" So I don't think, you know, they were ever asked to show up that way, larger than themselves. And I think that was even the approach where we approached them as I said, listen, I know what you can do. I've watched you perform. I expect that. Then there's no the crap I expect. But what I have to know is who are you, and do you know your power? Do you know your power? And I think that was for me. I wanted us to understand that what we represent is inclusivity, accessibility, all of those wonderful words. But what does that really mean to be inclusive? What does it mean to have access to the same resources? What does it mean to live it or to watch somebody else desire it and make it possible for them? I mean, you know, so part of my work was I had a lot of choreography going on, and that's why thank God I had Chloe and Winifred who understand me, because I'm trying to choreograph the administrative office. I want to make sure that they come down and see what we're doing. I didn't want to just be our culture. I was like this. No, in order to change the culture, dancers, you got to change the board. I want the board to understand what's going on down here. I want them to be inspired because they got to change. You know, so I knew I wanted a larger choreography to go on, but I knew I had a piece that we had to have finished very soon. But I remember the one day, if you all remember this, the last moment of trying to finish this work, I had this moment of Aretha Franklin all of a sudden. And this was only very shortly before she passed. So I just felt like thinking about, you know, we see Aretha in a certain way, or we see artists in a certain way, but we don't know, like Maya Angelou, how they had to be about the work of changing this society so that it was better for somebody else. And they still did their work. And that's what I was trying to get them to understand. You can still do your work and be about a larger impact. And so when I thought about Aretha Franklin, I had the opportunity to work at the White House and for about 5 years. And I remember her, just the impact that she had. Because it was her presence, her place. I mean, it's Aretha. So I found her music that one night. I dream a dream, and I was really thinking about Dr. King, that we cannot stop dreaming. We can't stop dreaming. So I came back the next day and I said, I put it on and I shared it with Chloe Winifred, and then I went up to Gil Boggs and I said, you know, Aretha was with us this morning for rehearsal, and he did like this. Aretha who? I said, Aretha who? Do you know any other Aretha?
There really are no
I knew I was in the ballet studio. And then he got real. He went, well, she didn't come to my office. I said, well, then you better come on down to the studio and see if she'll come on in there. And that was that kind of spirit that I think we were able to create together. That was seamless, seamless.
Well, okay, so y'all are just killing it right now. I'm like filling up note cards with more questions. All right, but here's one, because you said it, and I wrote these down maybe about 5 minutes ago, but then you actually said these words, and I'm like, okay, we got to get into this. So this is a question for all three of you, because I think it transcends, and this is a word these are two words that are getting thrown around a lot, but I don't think folk really understand it. And I feel like, and again, I could be argued on this is not across the board, but I feel like, particularly when it comes to Black arts, particularly Black time arts, right? Performing arts, there is this thing of access and inclusion just inherently, right? Because there's so much gatekeep. There's been so much historical gatekeeping of us in every way imaginable. So our art forms, by virtue, naturally become more inclusive and tiered, like everyone can't start, but so what is access and inclusion? And I'm just getting this vibe from you and just from what folks have said, that I'm like, wow, there's such a spirit of inclusivity. There's such a spirit of access and mentorship. And so I'm just wondering, what does that look like in all levels? What does that look like in terms of being like, the director of a company? What does that look like as far as a rehearsal or choreographer? Like, what does access and inclusion look like in terms of skill level, in terms of background, in terms of language, ability, language, all of that? Like, can you just speak more to that sort of, and how it manifests in your particular roles within the company, if at all? I realize that's an enormous
Where would you
question,
like to start?
Anywhere you want. I just wanted to, because you said it, and I just wanted to latch onto that,
well,
because I do think there's levels to it, right? Like,
sure.
Yeah.
Well, let me speak about starting the company in the 70s.
Yeah.
We didn't have access, and the people didn't even think about it. Arts were very elitist. They were very they were class oriented, very class oriented, and it's a European concept a little bit. The king would just have the king and queen would have their court, and they would do the court dances or whatever. So this is kind of historic. But when you think about community, you think differently. So in my training, I had both. I was very fortunate to have an extraordinary teacher who was, I would say, she was a classical ballerina with George Balanchine. So that's that class part. And so if she performed at the Met, you can imagine how many Black folks she performed with. Very few. You can imagine how many Black folks were at the Met. Very few. So her desire coming into the university at the Colorado Women's College was to change that, because she began to discover another part of the world. Ballerinas sometimes have to work just like that they don't have a chance to do anything but just get in there and train. But I realized that I grew up in Denver at the Bonfils, and I had a very extraordinary community experience that was professional. So I then began to understand that you can have community and professionalism, and they can be like that. And you don't have to make it about class. So I think in creating the company in the early days, I had to create a very specialized dance company. Not everybody could do what we were doing. Not everybody wanted to train like that. Everybody didn't want to work like that. Everybody was not as obsessed as we were about it either. So some people just wanted to just come and take a class. So in those days, we would do like street dance. I mean, now people do hip hop. But, so I realized that we needed a school so that we could then get access to children and to elders and to anybody who wanted to move, but they did not have to move in a certain way. And so having access to being wherever they chose to be and have that opportunity was what I wanted them to have. And so if they could not afford the arts, I never wanted them to be, to feel that they were deprived of something that they desired. And so it was really clear to me that I was, like doing two trains running, and that became difficult because when I toured the company, which is very early, we started touring in 72. I mean, we were touring colleges and universities, Army bases, Air Force bases. We just knew we were bad. We were going to find out about the world. We were not that good yet, but we were training all the time. But we were always giving what we learned and bringing that kind of thing. But we kept the company school going so that we could keep the community engaged in something that they would have access to. Because how many dancers you can take on tour is only about 10. So, other artists would say to me, Cleo, you've invested so much in the dancers. What about the actors? What about the musicians? What about us? So we began to broaden that so that we have poets and musicians and actors and all kinds of visual artists. And, so we've always made room to discover what people called access and accessibility. But it wasn't always easy because some people would say to me, Cleo, you can't be everything to everybody. And I'd say, well, I want to be a lot to as many people as I can. And it doesn't work for some people because they have a certain track that they've experienced or they know, and they don't feel so comfortable in other tracks. But I think what we've been able to do over the 50 years is keep both of those tracks. And now we have 5 tracks running, but keep those tracks going.
Yeah. So Winifred, Cleo, what does that look like for you all, in terms of when you actually engage with dancers of different backgrounds, skill levels, et cetera? Like, how do you create space for them to be individuals, but also despite what you may assume about me, I do not have a dance background. But I definitely fall on the street dance side. But I'm just curious about that, because you said something really profound, which is I wrote it too fast, but basically about like people, how they move, right? Like allowing people to move. You said move in a certain way. So how do you allow people to express that individuality, but also stick with the vision and the story you're trying to tell?
Okay. I'll make a comment to that. So one of the things that I think that was a blessing, which in the beginning I really didn't know that it was, is that I started performing long before I was trained. I didn't know nothing about training. I started performing. I was into my father's house in a congregation learning how to do some things, and I was like, this is the movement. Now, I don't know nothing about what position your feet's supposed to be in or anything like that, right? And so it allowed me the opportunity to see a spirit of an individual, although the technique may not be in place, because I had that opportunity. What I do want to say is that let's take the movement called a ballet, and let's take our company that has always been a company of different cultures. One thing that is very real is that when I started to really train and went to my first ballet intensive at 15, which was too late according to anybody else who's in the ballet world, I knew that it's something I wanted. Now, my body didn't look like those children, and I do mean children, because I was in the baby classes at that point. Didn't look like that, but my desire was greater than why someone else might be there. All right. There is a interesting thing that happens when you grow up with rhythm. And it doesn't mean from a point of view like this person has rhythm and this one doesn't. It means, what music did you listen to? How did you move around your world? How does that happen for you? You develop a different way of listening to music, right? So in our everyday opportunities to rehearse, you have to know that people are coming in with these vast backgrounds that have a different way of moving in the world. And so they may not have had to be grounded and focused. They may have had the luxury to be flittery and flowery, right? They may have had that kind of luxury. So they're going to hear a different beat and a different tune. And people go to this place of, right, Black people have rhythm. No, you have the rhythm of the life you live. And that rhythm comes very differently for each and every person, right? So there is this opportunity that I saw a lot while living in Los Angeles, that there are a lot of Japanese dancers that are like, what? Where'd you get that crazy downbeat hip hop in it movement, right? Because they're incredible imitators, right? Not saying that they weren't beautiful dancers, but they're incredible imitators. But when we think about this, we as a culture have been incredible imitators for a very long time as a place of survival. Others haven't had to do that in our culture. So it might be more challenging for them to move into our rhythm because they haven't had to do that. So that's a life thing, right? And so I get to take that and put it into the studio and say, okay, well, let me see. Let's give this person an opportunity to experience this role. And experiencing this role for them will bring more acceptance to their life, right? And they may experience the role only in the studio. Now, I'm going to be real about that. It might be only in the studio that they get to experience that role. But I want them to experience it because then they become a greater asset to the world because they've walked somewhat in those shoes if they're open enough to carry that forward. If they are open enough to become the artist and not stay at an incredible level of a tool, right? Because we all need tools to paint with and to play, and that all is necessary. But if one opens their soul to what it is they're doing, again, moving back to I performed before I knew how to dance. If you open your soul to that, then you get to experience a greater sense of wealth in your creativity and your artistry. So that's how I look at that inclusion. And as long as people are determined to not only ask for inclusion, but to be willing, you have to take the leap. You have to have the willingness to transform.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. That was a dissertation, everyone. That one was on the house. Yo, Chloe, anything to add? I know a lot's been said. A lot of gems.
I know. I'm like, I don't really need to. I could just sit here and just. I don't need to say anything. I mean, I could just to talk about maybe access. We're so grateful for Cleo Parker Robinson Dance to have an academy and our outreach programming that allows the teacher, the ensemble. We are the teachers, and we go out and we are able to be a part of our community and teach and go to schools that and teach kids who wouldn't touch a dance, who wouldn't be able to even step foot into a dance studio. And we're allowed to go and teach them, and not teach them dance steps, but teach them life lessons through dance, which is that's greater than learning how to do a tendu, learning how to navigate life through the arts and mental health and how that all comes together. And we need that right now. So that access that we're able to give school children is just wonderful. And my growing up, my mom made sure that I had access. We were very poor. I'm kind of the opposite of Winifred. I trained first, like I danced first and then almost learned how to perform. But I had access to both worlds, the ballet world, that dance world, and then my other rhythm being my mom calls it bar babies, growing up in the bar, in the jazz club. So I got a little bit of both rhythms in my life there. But access is true. I mean, Cleo gives away so much from her heart and her spirit, organization, you know. So like if you come to the academy, or you won't be turned away if you can't afford. So it's like, it's one of those beautiful things that really, that art shouldn't be the elite that you can't touch, that doesn't belong to, it belongs to everyone. So.
Real quick, KC Mo or KC Kansas?
KC Mo.
Okay.
Make sure get it right now.
Gotta make sure I'm clear. Gotta make sure I'm clear. Just
no offense to any KC players.
No. Listen, it's, you know,
where are you from?
We celebrate diversity.
Where are you from?
I'm from Detroit, Michigan originally.
Detroit's in the house.
Yeah, all day. Let's talk about it. But then I lived in
did you
Chicago.
What's Chicago?
That? So I lived in Detroit in Detroit and then surrounding suburbs. So I was 18 and then moved to Chicago, lived in Chicago for 11 years. And then I lived in New Mexico for a hot minute, and then Iowa, and then here. And then I lived in Louisville for 2 years, and then Breonna Taylor got murdered, and then we came back here. So yeah, we were in Louisville during all of that, just before we moved. And yeah, so I came back for this gig, for this job as the director, but I was a professor for 6 years before that. Yeah, so I was, anyway, but this is not about me. They ain't tuning in to hear me. They heard my story. They know my story ad nauseum.
You've been at CC for how long?
I was a professor in theater and dance from 2012 to 2018.
Okay.
And then I was the artistic director of Stage 1 Family Theater, which was all about access. It was basically like introducing kids to theater. I mean, we would see about 60 to 70,000 kids a year. Worked very closely with the school district. It was great, but it was, it was a struggle. But this opportunity came up, and it aligns my passions, multidisciplinary theater, performing arts, visual arts, and the Bemis School, the art school. So all about access and inclusion. And so, I came back for this gig, and then as soon as I took the job, COVID happened, which is a great segue into my next question, is, listen.
That's deep.
Listen, see, you have me on the Cleo Parker Robinson digital channel, and I'll tell everybody my story.
We want to hear your story.
I got some stuff to talk about, but I'm dying to ask this question, because Chloe, you just said, we were talking about we need that right now. That's what we need right now. So we got to talk about what we need right now. I mean, we're in the midst of dual pandemics and a reckoning. And a really interesting time, right? Like, obviously tragic, obviously tumultuous and chaotic, but it's also an amazing time of change. And what a time this is. And I can't imagine when you started this company, you thought 50 years down the line, if you even thought that, right? 50 years down the line, that this would be your 50th year, that this would be going on in your 50th year. So just what does it mean to be not just a live performing arts type of company, right? That's about let's gather and let's rehearse and let's sweat and be loud and all of that. What does that mean? But also to be a Black company, to be a female-led Black company in the Harlem of the West, or what was once the Harlem of the West. Now, I don't know what's going on over there in that area, what they call the Rhino or whatever they call it now. But what does it mean to be killing it, crushing it, making change in this moment, but with some real challenges for those of us, particularly in the performing arts sector? What have been the discoveries? What have been the tragedies? What are the opportunities? What are y'all navigating right now? Just open that. Are you guys working on is the next show all on TikTok? Like, what are we thinking about?
We got a show in the morning. They can talk about it a little bit, and then I'll give a little, I want to hear, I love hearing Chloe, Winifred, because usually I'm on these Zooms and I hear myself and I go, Cleo, listen, so important. I think the COVID allows us to listen deeper, deeper listening. And we were moving so fast, we didn't have time to listen, not like we're listening now.
Facts.
So I think there's an opportunity in the middle of madness, But I think hearing you know, how Winifred and Chloe are really helping me. I wouldn't say just cope. I think it's even beyond coping. It's and not trying to be successful, but being absolutely productive in our everyday, feeling productive and finding meaning that's not just for ourselves, but absolutely for ourselves. To love ourselves enough that we start absolutely with self, and then for those that we love and that we love. I think it's really been a powerful time. We're in it. We're thick in it. We're not. I would love to say, you know, 2021. We're no longer in our pandemics. We are thick in it.
And yep.
You know, they amaze me with their ability to keep it moving, because I can get stuck now. And I can tell you in a minute, I can get stuck in one rehearsal. I could just give me more than 20 minutes and I get stuck. And so they keep me moving. And we've been through a lot of stuff, a lot of difficult times and scary times, and we're in it, you know, but we have each other. And I think that's the beauty of it.
Right on. Winifred, Chloe, what are we doing? How are we going to get through this? What's the answer? What does it mean? What does it mean?
I'll tell you something that's been magical. What's been magical for me is that we've had the opportunity to slow down enough to look at how we want to continue to engage and what are really the foundational principles again. And one of the joys have been for me the self-expression on a choreographic aspect of the artists in the company, that through guided, I don't know, I'll say through guided words and formats, that they've come up with really incredible works of art, choreographically, visually, through dialogue and writing. That has been a place that I treasure, because I think that there has been a space of honesty. Now, on the other hand, there's also been a space of closing off, because, woo, that's intimate. And how intimate are we going to get here, right? That's a lot of intimacy taking place. And the arts itself is that. But we get to strip away really why we do it for others and look at how we do it for ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we haven't been able to be live in front of an audience. And even tomorrow, we are going to be doing a streaming performance, but that also has parameters and restrictions around it. So there are a lot of solo works and duet works because of how many people can be in a space at a time. Right. And also we are doing something, of course, this month where everyone gets to explore Black history. But the thing is that we are creating it every day. We are Black history. We are the history. And that happens every moment. And I think that that has been able to penetrate the dancers from different perspectives, right? That they can come in it from a Latin culture and say, how is this subject matter relevant to my life? And I think people are looking at it differently there. But I am rejoicing in the opportunity to dig deep and to celebrate the works that the company has been setting on each other and on themselves. That's been a joy. And I think it's opened up a place of creativity. And one thing that we had to get really cool with, which I remember Cleo, Chloe, and I's first conversation about our Zoom rehearsals, I'm gonna tell you what, it was like, they're off beat. No, they're not. They're in their own beat because they hear it 2 minutes behind the next person. And how are we gonna do that? And we had to like release and go, this is different. It's different, and how are we going to direct and move in this way, because they're also in their home, and none of our home living rooms are as big as the studio. So how are we really moving? What are we accepting? And so it got to come to a place of acceptance, but also even up into the moment of today's rehearsal, what is the reason? What's the intention? And whose legacy are you creating? And whose conversation are you sharing? Right? Because we're all part of this legacy, but we're all creating our own as we move forward. And I think that's what's been really a pleasure for me. And then there's been the technical aspects, and I'm so happy that Chloe loves digging into those more than I. But I can bridge again. I'm the bridge between Cleo and Chloe in this thing about, okay, Cleo, just, I know you can't feel them through the camera, but we're going to work it out.
Oh, that was difficult.
You're the official middle child.
Yeah, I was like, and Winifred always says to the dancers, Cleo's whispering in my ear, and this is what she's saying, and I'm sitting right next to her, or I'm texting something. Cleo just whispered, she doesn't understand why, and so it's a funny journey, because this technology is always hard. But Chloe got us going on Zoom because I thought the world was just going to be like, what? I've done this 50 years, and now I have to do what? And now my brain wouldn't even accept it. I was like, delete, reject. I was totally in that place. Whatever that was, that's where I was, and I swear I was. And I'm like, well, you know what? Your mind works a very different way. Guide me. So I had to surrender, feeling like I was directing. I had to be guided. And that was interesting, because I'm like, I don't know where we're going. We just have to trust we're going to go together. And so thank God, Chloe would just kind of experiment from week to week, and we'd talk about it. But the music didn't, we're looking at musicality. And, we're stickler. I have to say this as Black folks, we are sticklers about rhythm. You got to have that rhythm. I don't care what it is. You got to have that, whatever you think that rhythm is, you better be in the pocket with it. And I was like this. Pocket. I don't know what that was. And so Chloe would be like, Cleo, don't worry. We're getting a delay. And I'm going, what do you mean we're getting a delay? They are not on the count. So you'll have to, I'm just going to sit over here and just be quiet for a moment. But it was wonderful. I mean, as I can reflect, but there'd be days, where I'd be like, is this what we're going to live with? Yeah. So,
yeah, it was definitely the Zoom just all of a sudden shutting down. I mean, we had an audition, and then it was just like, we'll see you on Wednesday, and then Wednesday turned into August. So as far as like being in an actual physical space, and so I think that we are so grateful that we were able to stay employed and stay working and just being creative with each other. And I think it was really enjoyable to, we did a project called Dancer Diaries, and we were able to be a part of each other's worlds and our little spaces. But I think the Zoom was almost trying to hold on to that sense of normalcy, like trying to hold on to feeling like that was our constant. Everything else around us is changing, and we don't know what's going to happen the next day, but at least we have company class at 10, and we have rehearsal till 1 o'clock, and I'm going to see Cleo, and I'm going to see Winifred, and I'm going to see all my dancers. And that feeling of consistency and structure felt good, and I think was really good for the dancers in the beginning, even though it's difficult and annoying and as it was, but we did, and we navigated. And like Winifred said, we came up with the dancers had an opportunity to be really creative and come up with some really beautiful works. And also too, we were able to, I was actually talking with a former dancer, an alum of Cleo's, but again, going back to the why. And the why can be ever changing, but why do we do this? Or why am I doing this solo? What does this solo mean? What does this duet mean? We were able to investigate further what what the movement means and what the pieces mean and what they mean to us, which was, and that only makes us better dancers and better communicators, you know, out to the world with what we're trying to say, because we're trying to change the world. You know, we're trying to let people see what they don't want to see, or what they can't see, or what they've never seen before. We're trying, that's our job as artists, is to make change, you know, and invite people into our world. So yeah.
All right, here's what we're gonna do. This is the final question. This is perfect. I'm wrapping all these things together.
All right.
Because mostly in the chat we've just had unmitigated praise and people quoting your quotes back to you. Okay. My stock just rose. So shout out y'all for thank you for helping my stock rise. Okay. But yeah, just a lot of love in the chat. People are just very inspired and happy that you're with us and here, and I'm with them in that. So thank you. There is one specific question, and I'm going to sort of mutate that question into my final question. So Roger asked, though, like he was asking about how 5 points influence the way you dance and all of that, right? So here's what I want to do. No disrespect, Roger, but I want to sort of combine that into sort of an all-encompassing question, which is, you know, we are all for, you know, artists in Colorado, in this place, this very unique purple state, in a very unique time. And, you know, what does that mean to you? What is being a Colorado artist maker who chooses to live here? You know, what does Colorado provide for you? How does it influence you? You know, what does it mean? What does it mean to be a Colorado artist?
I just have to say, you know, I always wanted to be from New York. I didn't always claim being from Colorado. I mean, I always said I'm from Colorado, but my spirit was, you know, I'd lived in Dallas for a very short amount of time, and I'd been in LA. I wanted to be on either coast. I either want to be in the ocean on one coast or in the city on the other coast. But being in the middle of the country, I didn't realize how powerful that is, because it comes in and it converges right here in the middle of the country. And it took me a while to understand that. I mean, you know, I didn't understand how important Colorado was when I was starting the company. I mean, all I knew was that New York was where I felt I'd be fed.
Yeah.
My groundingness was here, but I felt I'd be fed in New York. And then once I left New York, and you know, I just went in to audition for Alvin Ailey or Arthur Mitchell, and my teacher guided me that way, Rita Berger, and she was Jewish from the Holocaust, and so from the Met. I mean, her whole world was totally different from me, but I just thought that's where I belonged. I was a dancer. Where else would I be? But I think what I realized is that everything can be in New York. The whole artist world cannot be in one place. And so how can I give others the opportunity that I felt existed there in New York? And so at that point, you know, I realized that I value some of my own experiences, which were to have the kind of training that I had, the diverse training. I had definitely ballet. I mean, everybody had ballet, and I had great ballet teachers, but I also had evolved ballet teachers who wanted to speak the world of dance. And so then I understood that the world of dance was what I wanted to share to young people. And so I felt if I stayed in New York and didn't pursue the vision of how broad is this, you know, what do we have to offer as being in the middle? Denver, Colorado, Black folks didn't even know Black people were up in Denver, you know. So we had a lot of places to kind of deal with in terms of people's stereotypes. Right. So I felt like there was a great opportunity. And then, you know, why not Denver? Why not? And so I think we could begin to think about Denver could be a destination as well. And what did we have? So we began to think about the mountains. The mountains were powerful, and we couldn't ski. I don't care. Everybody thought we were skiing, but I would not let the dancers ski. That didn't mean they didn't ski, but they got around to be like, "Are you kidding? Oh no, we didn't go skiing." And I'm like, see, we didn't have Facebook or none of that stuff where you could see what folks were really doing. But the dancers wouldn't tell on each other. Nobody would tell. My sister would go skiing, and I'd say, Susie, you know, I don't allow dancers to ski. And she would say, oh yeah, I know. And then they tell me later, you know, we went skiing and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, but because it was such a Western skiing, Broncos, sports, I think we had to work against that. And so it was a great challenge. But also there was a Black community here that was very important, very significant in Denver, Colorado Springs, Pueblo. One of my founders came out of Pueblo, and he was one of the top Harvard students, and he was my first attorney. So, you know, and then my husband was already an athlete, and he wasn't going to New York. I thought he was going to San Francisco, but it didn't matter. Wherever he went is where I wanted to go, and he didn't want to be in New York City. So, you know, and family was here. So I knew family was critical, and I didn't feel family in New York. I mean, I felt the family of artists, but I didn't feel community. That's a very different thing. Community, I knew I wanted to build. And so we had the opportunity to do it. So we just had to keep reinforcing the fact that being in Colorado was all right. It was all right. And then, you know, I was awarded the Governor's Award in '74 with Hanya Home at Colorado Springs. So here I went. Here there is a legendary modern dance legend that I'm being awarded with at the Broadmoor and up in Colorado Springs. And I got the governor. I said, but they want me to stay. I mean, that kind of cachet that kept happening. You know, I belong to this community, and they will uplift me. And the Black community was great. The NAACP, the Urban League. I mean, just all of our Black organizations were very clear that we belong to them and we belong to each other. And I don't know if I could have felt that maybe in New York or LA. I could have, maybe, I don't know. But that was a beautiful thing. And I began to get clearer and more proud and, you know, understanding that we had a place, a challenge, but a place.
Oh my gosh, a challenge, but a place. Winifred, Chloe, what does Colorado do for you? What does it mean to be a Colorado artist in 2021?
Who's reaching for your button? I want to hear from you, Miss Chloe Abel.
Oh, I guess I'm not. I know, I was waiting for you to go first. You know, it's interesting. Moving here coming from Kansas City, which is a small arts community, moving to New York and having that New York life for a moment. And then coming here to Colorado and being like, am I really moving to Denver, Colorado? Like that thought is already in your head. Like, Denver, are you sure? And that was always my thought until I got here. And Cleo is exactly right. That sense of community is what I felt right off the bat from just working at a coffee shop down the street that was Black owned, and living in the 5 Points area and feeling like there was this really solid arts community that was supportive. And it's hard though, being in a state that's so heavy in sports and hiking and yoga and everything, you know what I mean? It's hard for the arts to really stand out. So I think that I just want to be kind of that catalyst for change to get people back into the theaters. Hopefully we'll be back in the theaters, but get them back into appreciating the art and just knowing that it's there. We're here. We're here. We haven't stopped.
We're here.
Yeah.
So I think having the opportunity again to be born and raised here and to be able to have experienced the arts on both coasts and to like dive into them and to know what they were, you know, my first experiences of New York were here because Cleo brought all major choreographers and teachers to Denver to train us. And that was an important aspect. So there's two things, right? If we weren't from here, our community would embrace us deeper. If we are from here, we want to say, yes, stay and be part of what this movement is. But I think it's really, no matter where you are, you're the beacon for the artistry. And it doesn't matter where it is, right? So Colorado is this special place because we make it special. It's the here and the now that we only can work with, right? So, there's statistics out there that says that Denver, Colorado is one of the highest thriving art communities, right, in our United States.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting thing because people may not view it that way, right? Because I think that once we make the determination that all art is art, then we know how large the community is. When we make that determination that from the visual artist to the musician, to the dancer, to the poet, to the actor, there's so much of that here. And, my hope and vision is that once we're able to really gather, that we really break the barriers, that we don't become comfortable with what this new incarnation of relationship is with each other, that we can embrace the freedom of coming together and continuing in the legacy of art for humanity, because that's really the vision.
And that is a beautiful vision, and I, for one, commit to it. Winifred Harris, Chloe Abel, Cleo Parker Robinson, thank you for all the work you do. Thank you for 50 years. Thank you for letting us screen movement. Thank you for continuing even in this time, because people need you probably more than ever in a time like this. And any artist who is making in this time is a hero. So we are the essential workers as well. Shout out everyone for listening and experiencing this with us. And just thank you and good night. And thank you everyone behind the scenes.
Thank you.
Go to fac.coloradocollege.edu and check out movement and other content. Check out Cleo Parker Robinson, find out where they're going to be next. Stick around, and everyone just be safe and be inspired and tell your story. And thank you and good night.
Thank you, Idris.
Out.
And we look forward to seeing you in Denver, and we'll be back up at the Springs.
Let's go.
Thank you,
You already know. I'm gonna send y'all some emails.
Yeah, you're right. All right. Thank you. What a beautiful moment.
Good night, y'all.
Good night. Thank you.